Hello everyone, due to popular request I decided to upload some of the footage from the Big MP. I do not have access to the entire game because I feared that it would be too much for my old computer, so I only decided to record the last part where everyone was lagging anyway. This multiplayer was played with the SCM mods as well as Stefan's balance mod, and it basically had a whole lot of flavor when it comes down to civics and ethics even, and it's pretty interesting. I was a Doomsday boy and bent on spamming always. The reason why I picked Doomsday is because I assumed everyone would be bloodthirsty, and I couldn't miss the opportunity to straight up eliminate at least one of the 2-3 good players in this galaxy. Stefan mod also gave the home starbase extra trycraft and nerf for early defense, so I had to slap a lot of PD on those corvettes and squeeze a bit more corvettes in the early game for rushing. And once I realized my neighbors would not make fine allies, I just decided to attack. As a third target though, much to my surprise, I realized the players from SCM Discord were much more organized than I thought, and quickly banded together. I believe there were many ways I could have killed them here and now, but I didn't. I was very surprised by how easily they set aside their difference in competition, so I didn't do the proper thing, such as probing the system before jumping in, or get ready to surrender an extra war that didn't need to be fought at that moment. Anyway, from there on things were messy. I had no experience on taking 4 guys at once from our side, the Asterix side, and like most problems, it would have been much easier to prevent than to cure. The worst part was that there were clues that time would play in my favor, as they weren't that well organized and I already picked apart one of the coalition member. He also got immediately replaced by the way, and survived several wars. But time was in fact not working in my favor, as the player on the other side of the galaxy, at least for a while, had a much easier time, and the winner would be decided at the end of the session. So this was actually the final war against the coalition, and it was a pretty desperate one on my side. The reason being they actually invited each other in the war, and all their fleets were together. So I played my trump card, which is buying time. Right then my first trap was set into motion. It's a very easy one, it's just upgrading your ground fortress, which gives it hyperlane inhibitors, and this is very efficient at slowing down an invasion, essentially. My second trap wasn't so efficient. I wanted to fight some of the enemy fleets in the sanctuary systems and hopefully make them engage the sanctuary stations. Unfortunately it didn't work, so kinda backfired. Such loss was acceptable compared to what I could have achieved if the trap worked. When I reached the capital of one of my targets, it was obvious that it would take a bit more than just controlling the system, as they were using a novel civic from the mod, which allowed them to have absurd amount of armies on their planet. And yep, I couldn't be bothered to actually bombard the planet down. I had, again, in this particular scenario, time was not in my favor. Because I knew such a war would never end in my favor, I decided to try and build as much war exhaustion as I could in the enemy camp by sending my very resilient cruisers against some of their more isolated fleets, and especially the ones that were made of a lot of corvettes and in no retreat mode. Ultimately, this strategy started to pay out as their war exhaustion was now very high. Then the last member of the coalition joined the war, and he was actually much more prepared than I anticipated. Soon I would be in status quo range, but status quo in those conditions would mean that I would lose most of my cohorts, which was a bad affair. Thankfully I had the instinct move of doing one of my little bad tricks, which is adding a construction ship and building a starbase to retreat to. I also ended up electing a destroyer-focused ruler. Ship-focused rulers are very important in Stellaris. With what I said previously in mind, this action should have a more sense now. Ultimately, by simply reclaiming the stations they had taken without even having to invade the worlds they had stolen, I could status quo with nigh 0 losses in this war, which was a huge deal. Now I had to fight the cruiser guy, who seemed to be one of Stefan's fanboy, because he was using a lot of strike rafts. He loved them strike rafts. Fortunately, I knew how to counter such strategy.
It was at this moment that he knew. He fucked up.
have an entire video dedicated to Strikecraft that should be released soon. But what you should know about this weapon is that it can be very potent, but it takes some setup, and if you're on the back foot, it can quickly backfire. For instance, in this case, I had Nebos Tibes to retreat to, and Strikecraft are very bad at killing ships. They mostly make them retreat. So, yep. And they're also very weak in close range battles. The next work kinda show that this MP could not really be taken seriously, question mark. The reason being that there was a very weak player that survived for so long. In most competitive scenarios, players like that usually get wiped out fairly easily, so yeah. I was getting desperate, and for me it was pretty much putting him out of his misery. I also had a final shot at winning the game, thanks to the fact that I got Proton Launcher as a tech option. Though I was definitely not above doing such wars. So in the end, the other guys were supporting the third player trying to win this game, went for a last war on automaton, but they did a huge mistake. They only claimed a handful, if not just one planet. So my push would become much more difficult to execute since automaton was... Well, he did lose his fleet, but his economy was pretty much unscathed. So despite my efforts to rally all my fleets to his systems, trying to attack him from different angles to, you know, disorient him, it didn't work. So that's that. So yeah, GG. I think there was definitely a world that could have won this game, but it actually was down to the details, and I really didn't expect it to be so down to the details. Like, yep. One major mistake I guess I did was in that game was not using no retreat at the very end, but I was kind of overloaded by inputs. My game even crashed as a mean to tell me to please stop. Oh yeah, GG. Maybe another time.